Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Coffee with Tea. I'm your host, the amazing T Street. This morning's topic, don't skip the process of changing lenses. How we see the world is different depending on the lens through which we view it. How I view the world is through my own lived experience and the lens of my own life. And that's why sometimes we can be looking at the same situation and see something different. I love inquiry by young people. I believe that young people are supposed to ask as many questions as they can think of. I tell kids all the time the most successful people on the planet are people who are curious. And I like when they ask questions, but every now and then they ask me questions. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. But I try not to say because I said so. I try not to do those kind of trite things that adults always did to us. And so I try to give it answers. And if I don't have the answer, I'll say, let me go find the answer for you. But the other day I was having, during our snack break, young people like to come up and talk to me. And so I was sitting at my table and I was doing a little work and said, Miss T, are you busy? And I said, no, I can talk. So she sat down and she said, Miss T, can I ask you a question? I said, of course. I said, this is part of your inquiry phrase, right? She goes, yes, ma'am. She said, are you a Christian? I said, what do you think? She goes, yeah, I think you are. I said, okay, I am. And I said, are you? She said, I think I used to be, but now I'm not. I said, okay, tell me more. She goes, well, Miss T, I don't understand. I don't understand how you can be a Christian. You told us that your mom died. You told us that like one of your sons is like really going through a hard time. And, you know, how can you serve God when things like that happen in the world? I mean, like you trying to help all of us and your son, he tripping. What kind of a God would let that happen? What kind of a God allows people to die? Like when I lost my grandma, that's what she said. I think that's when I stopped believing in God. And I said, that's an interesting perspective. I said, can we change lenses? And I started to talk to her about how we view the world depends on the perspective and the lens through which we look. For example, these lenses, y'all, these just for fashion. I can't see a thing, but I like them. And I'm about to get my new prescriptions later this month, put in those glasses. There's another pair. They cute. All the colors and all the things, but it doesn't help me to see better. It's not until I put on the lenses that have my prescription that I'm able to see better. And so I explained to her, I said, the lens that I look at the bad things that happen in the world is different. I don't look at the badness of it all. I said, one of the things that I always thank God for concerning my mother is that I had my mom for 83 years of life. But for me, it was however long I had lived. I had my mom all of these years. I had friends who lost their parents as adolescents. And so my lens through which I look at it is a lens that says, thank you, God, for the longevity of my mother's life and the amount of time that you gave me with her. The thing I say about my son is, God, I thank you for the ability to reach other kids. And I thank you that you are sending other adults in my son's life when he can't hear my voice, just like you send me into the lives of other young people. So, how we view something is all about perspective. Sometimes when it's negative, I just want you to put on a positive lens and look at the world that way. And I said, when I look at God and I think about all of the blessings, even when I'm having rainy days, I think about the number of sunshiny days. Even when I'm having valley experiences, I told her, I said, I think about how many times God has allowed me to stand on the mountaintop. And I'm as grateful for the God of the mountaintop as I am for the God of the valley and everything in between, because God doesn't change. My lens does. And so I choose to see him in the valley as a God who loves me enough to grow me. And I choose to see him on the mountaintop as a God who loves me enough to restore me. And so all of the things in between, I choose to use the lens of positivity to say, though my circumstances may not be good, my God is always good. And though sometimes I don't feel it, he promised me, I am always with you. Matthew 20 and 23. And so I looked at her and I said, so as you think about your life and why you choose not to be a Christian, I'm not telling you what to be, but while I want to encourage you to look at God with a different lens and say, out of the 8 billion people on the planet, God chose me to come into life. I said, I don't know about you, but that's a heck of a perspective. And she was like, Miss T, I love the way you look at things. And I said to her, no, it's not just the way I look at things. It's just that I choose different lenses for different situations. And as it relates to God, I choose to see God through the lens of faith. So I'm the amazing T Street, but you know what? There's absolutely positively nothing amazing in me that's not in each and every one of you. Whatever you're doing, when your people ask you questions, take the opportunity to answer. Parents, stop saying to our kids and our grandkids, because I said so, because it stifles their sense of inquiry, which is how they develop critical thinking skills. I'm the amazing T Street. Nothing amazing in me that's not in each and every one of you. So go and have an amazing day. Peace.